Hello and welcome to another episode of the Edges and Sledges cricket podcast powered by Seat Tires. I'm your host for this week, Ashwin. We have Varun joining me from Singapore. DJ is out actually playing some cricket this week, so he's missing some of the IPL action and he won't be recording, but very exciting because obviously, as you know, if you've been following us, we do 2 episodes a week during the IPL. There's been a lot of demand for daily episodes. Unfortunately, I don't think we can quite pull that off, but we do 2 episodes a week. So DJ and I recorded our midweek episode where we talked about the first few games of the week. Varun, how are you feeling? Sunday, it's our first double header. Points table is starting to balance out. How are you feeling about the IPL so far?
Yeah, it's been good. I love double headers. Like, I really look forward to that. I don't know why they've stopped doing Saturday and Sunday. Probably it's good because a lot of us have other social plans and activities. So I'm glad they don't, but I really love the days in which double headers are there. IPL has been great so far, man. You've seen some games where there've been sixes all around. You've seen some games where teams can't chase 130, 140. It's been a good balance. Most importantly, I'm really happy to see some of the bowlers get into the action and some of the uncapped players. So that's a lot of fun.
It definitely feels like it's been a bowler's IPL so far, which I'm not complaining about, right? We all talk about and complain about kind of balance between bat and ball, but 4 matches essentially happened since we last talked or since our previous midweek episode, and we're going to cover them a little. But it's been an interesting, I was trying to summarize, right? Rajasthan got their first win, unfortunately, against Delhi. Chennai got their first win. Mumbai just seems to continue to have this ability to find wins when they have no business to win the matches. And then Hyderabad has now, for the first ever time in their history, got 3 consecutive losses. And RCB has got 3 wins and is sitting pretty at the top of the table. Pretty safe to say none of us would have predicted this start at the end of week 1.5, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, because even though Sunrisers Hyderabad plays a different brand of cricket, a lot of us call it boring, but you have to give them credit. They've made it to the playoffs a lot. They've won before. But I didn't expect them to lose 3 in a row. And similarly, RCB, yes, they're a new outfit completely. They've got some good uncapped players. They've got that middle order sorted. We'll talk through that as we talk about this week's game. But yeah, I wouldn't have predicted this. On your Mumbai Indians point, I just want to say, I think the difference is they know how to win. They know what is required to take them to the finish line on every game. You're right. Mumbai Indians actually could have had 3 losses in a row, but they turned it around and had 2 wins. So good performance by them.
Yeah, really well said. So with that, let's jump right into the first game. We're going to talk off the week since we last recorded, right? Rajasthan versus Delhi. This is a little painful to talk about, but we have to. And I think at this point, 14th year of being Delhi fans, we're pretty much accustomed to seeing it a little. But Varun, you want to talk through that? Delhi ended up getting sent into bat first, putting up only 147 for 8. But what was most jarring was, despite Rishabh Pant kind of batting well, it was just the polar opposite of the first match, right? The first match, the openers saw us home. Essentially, the top order was so reliable, essentially. And in the second one, we just realized completely exposed without the top 3 firing, right?
Yeah, so let's walk through that match a little bit. You expect Shaw and Dhawan to come out. You know, in the Delhi Capitals, you expect one of them to fire. But Shaw got out on 2, Dhawan on 9, and Rahane, man, like feeling a little bit all out of sorts, out for 8 off 8. The guy who did the damage was Jaydev Unadkat, a millionaire from the IPL. He's come in, done a fantastic job, picked up the first 3 wickets, and you've got Delhi on the back foot. Pant walks in, playing very smoothly. I'm seeing a different Pant. I don't know if it's the captaincy. I don't know if it's the last 3 months, but you feel like he's hitting a lot of 4s. And in his innings, he actually hit 51 with 9 boundaries and 0 sixes at a strike rate of 160. Now, that's not very typical of the Rishabh Pant we know in T20 cricket, but good to see that. Stoinis struggling big time. 0 again, I think, right? He hasn't made any runs. Personally, you know, a lot of people are going to be disappointed. What I would say to Delhi Capitals fan is just hold on, because we've always had issues about peaking too early. I'm personally okay. Stoinis needs a little bit of time to get back into the tournament. He hasn't played cricket for a long time. Let's give him that benefit of doubt. He won us a lot of games last year. So let's hope he peaks early. And then, Ashwin, basically the Delhi Capitals never really got going, but it helps that you had a Lalit Yadav, a Tom Curran, and a Chris Wokes to follow. Between them, they almost hit close to 60 runs. And that kind of gave us the boost that we need to hit 147. Rishabh Pant was playing so beautifully. Unfortunately, got run out. Riyan Parag got him run out and then did his famous dance. It was a great piece of fielding.
Yeah, so let me quickly ask you about that, right? 6, 7, 8, and this game for Delhi were, or let's say 5. 5 is Stoinis, with who he won us a lot of games last year. But then 6, 7, 8, Lalit Yadav, Tom Curran, Chris Wokes. It's probably the weakest 6, 7, 8 of the tournament, right? To be totally honest. I mean, you got Morris
Apart
coming
from
in.
apart from Sunrisers, I would
Fair,
say.
good point, good point. But like Dhoni bats at 7, Russell bats at 7, Sundar bats at 7. It just doesn't feel like Delhi's has the right caliber at 6, 7, 8. Or am I overthinking that?
No, it's absolutely right, and actually that's been the biggest problem for Delhi. Your young guys are doing well up top. Shreyas Iyer has been doing well in the middle order for a number of seasons, but you just don't have that explosive hitter now. We did have Chris Morris, and he didn't work out that season. So I think Delhi has tried. They've got Hetmeyer. They're not playing him. A little bit of balance issues. A lot of teams in the IPL take a few games to figure out what is their right balance. We'll talk about that a little bit in the Sunrisers game as well. But for now, I think, yeah, just an average batting performance by Delhi.
Let's talk about Chris Morris since you mentioned him, right? In the chase, you only needed 148. Didn't seem like it was out of reach necessarily, but still, David Miller, who I think we've made a lot of negative comments about on the show, looked good, made 62 off 43 balls. But then I think even when he got out, the 7th wicket fell. Delhi still looked in it, right? Let's be honest. They needed 44 off 25 balls. Delhi still looked like they were pretty much in it. And then Chris Morris took the game away from us. So, Varun, that's going to be the recipient of our first SIAT award of this week, the SIAT Puncture Resistant Award. Because imagine, like, you didn't get strike in the previous game to try to hit a boundary, and now you've come and shown the team this is what I can do.
Yeah, and I would say the SIAT Puncture Resistant Award on 2 counts. The first is he had to take a lot of flack for getting that price in the IPL auction, which again, as we know, he didn't ask for. And the second is getting rejected of that single, which Sanju Samson also came out, Chris Morris also came out. Maybe they wouldn't have taken it, maybe they don't regret it, but for Chris Morris to not be given strike when he's one of the most valuable players in that team, I think it was phenomenal. He started a little bit slowly. It looked like he wasn't cleanly striking the ball. But towards the end, I mean, he had a 6 off Rabada, 36 of 18 balls. And what seemed to be a match where Delhi Capitals were in charge predominantly. I mean, they had them 42 for 5. And I almost was like, time to switch off the TV. Let's do something else. This is a game in the bag. David Miller and Chris Morris came out. So full credit to them. It was frustrating. They won with 2 balls to spare. And yeah, it was great. Rajasthan. Now, remember, Rajasthan playing without Ben Stokes, which is a big thing for them. No Ben Stokes, no Jofra Archer. You would have written them off, but they came back and proved themselves. So kudos to them.
Final thing on this one, let me just ask you. There's a lot of conversation about team selection early on, right? You can argue Delhi has people like Ishant and Umesh and Nokia. Hetmeyer didn't get to game this game. All those things. You never want to see your team lose. But is there value in your team getting an early loss against a side that they should have beaten, just because then it forces you to make tough. I mean, arguably, if Delhi had won, then Rishabh Pant wouldn't have needed to change anything. Or I don't know. How do you think about that argument?
The thing with the IPL is that apart from the Mumbai Indians, I think every team can have their day. So, yes, when you're midway through the tournament, you could say, team B, C, and D are stronger. So let's get a win against them and boost morale. But in the early stages, seriously, you can't count out CSK, you can't count out Rajasthan, you can't count out Punjab. And these three are typically not the strongest from last year. So I think you have to take your wins. What we also see is that the teams that get to 4 or 5 wins quickly often make the playoffs, because then the pressure on them is just to win another 2. The teams that are struggling to make always hang out in the middle of the table or lower, and they do spoil the season for some other team, but they don't make it themselves. So personally disappointed, and Delhi should have closed that one.
Took me a second when you said teams B, C, and D to realize you were saying the letters B and C, not insulting me. But let's go a different direction, right? Delhi obviously came up short that game. We'll talk a little bit about in the Sunday's second match of the Saturday's. What is it? Sunday, second match of the doubleheader. Delhi made some changes. But before that, we're going to cover the next game, which was Punjab versus Chennai. Chennai, again, at the Wankhede, following the pattern, won the toss, chose to bowl, put Punjab in. Punjab basically didn't make any runs of notice, and Chennai finished it off in 15 overs. But let's talk about this guy who's been kind of in and out of consideration for Team India. Gets 4 overs on the trot with the new ball, gets Mayank Agarwal, Chris Gale, Deepak Huda, who is the hero from the last game, and Nicholas Puran. for both Mayank and Nicholas Poon for Ducks, all within the first 7 overs of the match. And of course, I'm talking about Deepak Chahar. I mean, there's not much else to talk about in a game when a team gets 106 for 8 in 20 overs when one guy picks up 4 of your top 5 batsmen in the first 7 overs, right?
Yeah, and so in quick succession, our second award for the week is our Seat Secure Drive award, and that goes to Deepak Chahar because the control that he showed was just phenomenal. Now, remember, Deepak Chahar in the first game looked a little bit out of sorts. You could see Dhoni looking a little frustrated. His line and length were a little bit all over the place, but this is what Dhoni and CSK want him to do. They want him to come out. They want him to bowl minimum 3 overs on the trot. And they want him to just kind of swing the ball, get something with the new ball, get the top order out. And he did his job beautifully. So, I mean, if you read the top order of Punjab, it was 5-0, 10-10, 0. 25 runs between the first 5 batsmen. That is ridiculous. So, very, very tough for Punjab. I think when you do start like that, it's always difficult to come back. I think they've had the lowest score in this tournament so far. They got 106 for 8. The only other thing I want to mention is that Ravindra Jadeja in the field. Now, he bowled 4 overs for 19. Typical Jadeja. He didn't pick up a wicket, but some of the catches he took and the run out of KL Rahul were just phenomenal. At the end of the match, Deepak Chahar actually came out and said, I want 11 Jadejas on the field. I was a little confused by that because then obviously he's saying he doesn't want himself
He's
to
going to
play.
leave himself out.
Yeah, so I don't know what Jadeja is going to do then, but he wants 11 Ravindra Jadejas on the field. I think we all do.
Yeah, absolutely incredible, right? And I think the first few games of the IPL, including that first Bangalore game, where there was just so many drops. It's the cliche we've talked about on this show over the years, but catches win matches and all that. But if you can convert those split second chances, and Hardik Pandya did that in the field for Mumbai later in the week, it just changes the game. And Jadeja, I don't know, so many discussions over the years about 3D and 4D and all those things about cricketers, but Jadeja in the field is absolutely getting you 1 or 2 extra wickets almost on average per innings, right? So Chennai came out to chase. Unfortunately, Gaikwad looked shaky again. I just want to ask you, so Faf opened, anchored the innings, pretty straightforward. Not a lot to talk about when you're chasing 107. I just want to ask about Moeen Ali batting at 3, right? Looked good, clearly had license to hit. Came out, made 46 of 31, got out the way he played the whole innings, which was just swinging the ball hard. Would have been a nice little 50 for him, but could that be the game changer for CSK this season if Moeen Ali can play a Narayan-like role, which DJ honestly has been talking about for a while?
Yeah, I think it is. And remember, Moeen Ali is a much better batsman than Narayan. So I think it's a good move. There was a lot of chat about Moeen Ali opening as well. I think basically Dhoni came out and said that we're not utilizing Moeen Ali if we put him lower down the order. So good move. It's tough to see Mr. IPL not bat at 3. You're so used to it. But hey, if it worked once, it may not work every time. But I think the key thing is Chennai always needs that guy to just go out there and smack it a little. Now, remember, even Faf only plays at about 100, 120 strike rate usually. So Moeen Ali coming in can shake things up, and the other batsman can then play a little bit longer. So good decision. CSK has moved Sam Curran up the order. They've moved Moeen Ali up the order. Let's hope they find a little bit of stability. I think Raina was a little bit out of sorts. He should have just won the game in this one, right? But they lost Raina and Raidu in a chase of 106. So not a fantastic performance at the end. Chennai were always going to win this, I think. But it was an all-round good performance.
I think that's an example of where the bowlers, like you said, stepped up, right? I don't think CSK still looks solid enough with the bat, but hey, when your strike bowler picks up 4 early wickets, then the bowlers did the job that day. So well played by Deepak Chahar. As we're progressing through the week, like I said, the Rajasthan Royals got their first points on the board. CSK got their first points on the board. We moved into Saturday, where Hyderabad was looking to get their first points on the board against Mumbai. Always a tough battle. We're going to take a quick Seat Tire strategic timeout, and we will be back after the break to cover the next 2 games of the week. Welcome back to the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, brought to you by Seat Tires. IPL season is alive. It's kicking. As we're recording this, Delhi's playing Punjab, and it's feeling a little nervous because the openers have gotten off to a great start, but I'm not going to derail because we will talk about that match in our next episode. We're here to talk about Saturday's game, the Mumbai Indians versus the Sunrisers Hyderabad. Varun, feels like a tale of 2 cities with the pitches, where in Chennai at Chepauk, the team's batting teams chasing are winning them pretty easily. Know how much you need to get down, know how many runs you need to make. Pretty straightforward. Rohit obviously realized, I'm sorry, at the Wankhede, they're chasing. I messed that up. At the Wankhede, teams chasing have been winning. At Chennai, Rohit obviously realized the pitches are really hard to read, and so he won the toss and opted to bat first. Seems like the smart call, but still the Mumbai team only made 150, right? So talk me through that, actually. They looked pretty good. Deepak looked solid. Rohit looked solid. But they wouldn't have even gotten to a 150 if it not for some kind of finishing fireworks from Karan Pollard, right?
Yeah, and again, that was the issue, right? Your Rohit and Deepak, really, both of them were looking good, but both of them were going below 120, 130 strike rate. Deepak for his 40 was of 39 balls. So they batted well, but they never got going. Now, the difference in this game, and that shows you how much Mumbai Indians depends on these two young players, Surya Kumar Yadav and Ishan Kishan. They both
who?
just hit
What is that?
Ishan Kishan. They both got out very cheaply, right? So 10 of 6, and Ishan Kishan.
I couldn't even survive 2 minutes.
I couldn't. Kishan was subject to some wonderful bowling by Rashid, man. Like, I was reading a very interesting stat just earlier today that said in the previous IPL in UAE, I think Kishan was able to figure out Rashid's leg spinner, but couldn't figure out the googly. But he bowled disproportionate number of leg spinners. In this game, I think he bowled almost 90% googlies to Kishan. So kudos to Rashid Khan there. He didn't pick up the wicket. Mujib did, actually. And after we talk about the Mumbai Indians batting lineup, Ashwin, I think we should just talk about the Sunrisers team selection, because they did have a lot of changes. So anyway, they got to 150. The thing is, right, when I was watching that game, I think they were 137 or 138 off the 19.4. And at that point, you're feeling that if Sunrisers can restrict them to 135, 138, this is game on. And the last 2 balls were 2 sixes. So from 138, you got to 150. Momentum swings Mumbai's way. 150 at the Chepauk, I think Mumbai were always in with a chance.
Yeah, really well said. And I think important points on Rashid Khan. I know I want to recall that I think you said Mujib was only selected for the Sunrisers to give Rashid some company in the hotel under quarantine, but he picked up 2 wickets, so not the worst day outing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, let's talk about the Hyderabad team selection then, right? There's been a lot of debate, including a tweet by Sanjay Manjrekar, where basically he said they brought in Virat Singh at number 4. You have Vijay Shankar playing at 5, who's experienced, but obviously doesn't have the most stellar record in the shorter format. Then you have Abhishek Sharma at 6, Abdul Samad at 7. Like, can you afford to play this much inexperience, if you will? Let's pick on Virat, Abhishek, and Abdul. Can you play all 3 of them in one side? They could all be explosive on their day. They could all have great days, but they could also just all fall short, as they did today. But talk to me about that, Varun. In a side where you have Holder and Williamson on the bench, I know you can't swap domestic for overseas, but you have Kedar Jadhav, who, to your point, you actually thought, despite your dislike of him, is a smart buy because he's been there before. He's played these high pressure situations. He's done it for India. So what do you think about playing this much inexperience?
I think it's a very tough call, right? Because Sunrisers Hyderabad, what they've done is they've already played Nabi in the opening game. Then they realized we've got to play Holder. Now, last IPL, they never start with Nabi or Holder. Both are valuable players. You've now swapped them out for one another. Essentially, I 100% agree that Bairstow and Warner need to play. But you've tried a Bairstow at 4. It wasn't that bad, but you've not won a game. Now you've gone back to Warner and Bairstow at the top. The risk with that is there is no middle order. So I actually prefer Bairstow at 4. Saha, the day he clicks, he can play well, but Bairstow at 4 gives you a little bit of comfort that even after 5-6 overs, if you're 2 down, you still have a great player. Now, when you come down to it, Manish Pandey is at 3. I know, look, Ashwin, I know you love the guy, but I'm sorry, he's just not that reliable. I've never liked him, and he's not doing himself any favors by these kind of performances. You know, the joke is that when Manish Pandey hits a 50 and stays not out, Hyderabad is going to lose. So the minute Manish Pandey got out on 2, this time suddenly messages were flying around saying, hey, Hyderabad's going to win this because Manish Pandey got out. So not a great reputation to have. But that middle order, like you said, Virat Singh, Vijay Shankar, Abhishek Sharma, and Abdul Samad, too inexperienced. they've got like 0 international India games between them. Maybe Vijay Shankar has a couple. But what are you doing? Like, how can you play this? I actually think a Nabi or a Holder are better in the middle order, even as a batsman, than these guys. So Sunrisers have just missed the boat. They've missed the trick somewhere. Mujib bowled well, but you really need another spinner when you've got the likes of Rashid playing. So you're missing a trick. Kedar Jadhav should play. And this is a call from me to the Sunrisers Hyderabad. Make him play. He's not as bad as I have said in the past.
There you have it. I might have to cut that clip out and remind you that at some point you said Kedar Jadhav should play. But I agree. I think my approach might be a little different, where I do like Warner and Bairstow at the top, but I still think, as I've said many times, you cannot leave out Kane Williamson. So you have to, for me, you have to drop a Mujib.
But he's injured, right?
Is he?
Got an elbow, yeah, he's got an elbow injury. So I think the Sunrise, I think over the last 4 years, Hyderabad have realized they need Kane Williamson. So you will drop a Mujib, you will figure out how to get Williamson in, but it's just unfortunately that he's injured.
Yeah, got it. I didn't realize that. I would play him at 4 when he's ready, but that's totally fair. So Hyderabad came up short. I do want to quickly mention again what we said about Jadeja happened to be true this time around for Hardik Pandya as well, where he picked up 2 fantastic runouts. Arguably game-changing, because 150 is enough in this stadium, but Hyderabad got pretty close, right? They got to within 13 runs, and so the runouts of both Warner, yeah.
And I was going to say they got to within 13 runs. So what was the difference between the two sides?
It was just those 2 sixes from Pollard in the last 2 balls. And it's amazing how, use all the cliches, cricket is a momentum game, but Mumbai would have gone into the dugout at the end of the innings feeling momentum, feeling energy. 150 is a psychological barrier too. It's slightly better than 149 because you've now got to another milestone. So Mumbai Indians continue to just have this incredible knack of finding ways to win, even when you don't think they should. That wraps up Saturday's game. And we go into the first match of Sunday, 5 a.m. for me. We're a little better time zone for you, but 5 in the morning. I was up. I was watching it, so I might be asleep by the time this episode, by the time we're done this episode. But RCB going for their 3rd win on the trot. KKR, trying to actually stamp some sort of consistency on this tournament. They've been very hit or miss. They've blown a little bit hot or cold. Walk me through this innings, right? 6 for 1. Virat Kohli getting out in the second over. 4 balls later, Rajat Patidar getting out. So let's start with the interesting choice that RCB made to bring Rajat Patidar back in at the expense of Dan Christian. They only played 3 overseas players, but they wanted to give this young guy a chance.
I can't remember the last time a team played only 3. I'm sure it's happened before. Definitely. I think Gambhir has picked 3 for KKR in the past. But I was surprised to see that. Now, the logic is that Rajat Patidar obviously plays spin better than Dan Christian. So, interesting choice. But again, a lot of changing, right? You had Shabazz playing at 3 the last game. Now you've got Patidar at 3. So, a bit odd for me.
Yeah, but so let me specifically ask you about this decision. I don't know if you were watching it, but in the second over of the match, Chakravarti picks up to both wickets, right? It's the most logical move in the world to bring him back for the 4th over, right? Just give him another. He's just picked up 2. He looked great. 1 was spinning in, 1 was spinning out, and they didn't give it to him. So I step back when I say, I think I've said many times, Owen Morgan to me is one of the finest limited over captains I've seen in our generation, at least. And there were 3 or 4 missteps for me today that were just very shocking, right? Chakravarti being the big one. So I think it's one of those where they had a specific game plan to save 1 bowler for, let's say, an AB to come in later, or was it just that, hey, when I've picked up 2 RCB wickets early, I'm going to give my other guys a chance to try to pick up some more?
No, I think it was a complete miss. I can't believe it myself. Even the commentators, when they were talking, they were just like, what is happening? How can you not give this guy another over? So they really missed a trick there. I don't know what they were waiting for. In fact, at the end of the innings, you don't want your pacers bowling to AB de Villiers, but nobody bowling to AB de Villiers is good from that perspective. They just missed a trick. And a lot, sad for me. I thought this is Kohli's return game. I trumped him in my fantasy team, and then he got out in the second over. I was extremely disappointed.
So I trumped a guy who did pretty well, actually. I captained AB de Villiers. But let's talk about Glenn Maxwell really quickly first. What happened to him? Who's this guy? This is not the same player we've seen for the last 3 years. 78 of 49, batting at 4, started his innings slowly because the team had just lost 2 wickets, consolidated, accelerated later. Who is this fellow?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Glenn Maxwell had not hit a 50 for 4 or 5 years in the IPL. He didn't hit a six the whole last IPL. I don't know. Sometimes it talks about team dynamics. Sometimes it maybe he got a wonderful welcome from Virat Kohli and AB de Villiers. They must have sat down, shared their vision with him, said, you bat between us, you go for it, you've come in for a reason. Whatever it is, I have a feeling that they've really welcomed him, and he's responded very well to it. So he's taken on responsibility in situations where Virat is getting out early. You've got Maxwell to come. There's no worry about AB and Virat getting out too early because this guy's in between. Yeah, he's a hit or miss player. He's going to have 3 bad games in a row. I have no doubt about that. But what a start for RCB and what a start for Maxwell.
And so then this move for AB at 5, again, I captained him and I was starting to get nervous, saying it's always a risk to, so here's your fantasy tip for the week from Edges and Sledges. It's risky to captain somebody who bats at 5 because there's a chance they don't even get to bat or they get to bat a couple of overs. But AB at 5 seems to have found his form, right? 76 off 34, not out. Just Ray Russ picked up 5 wickets by bowling 2 overs in the death in the last match, and this time he got hammered, 2 overs for 38, no wickets. So anything to say about AB de Villiers? There's no words left almost.
We're
right?
just so lucky that he's still playing. That's it. We are fortunate to watch him bat. Let's hope that he just continues the IPL for a few years. Honestly, you don't see players like this very often. All of us watching have to consider ourselves very, very fortunate. Russell bowled such good overs in the death the last couple of games, and everyone who was watching it said the real test is going to be, can you bowl to AB de Villiers? And we found out the answer today. So Russell needs to do a lot of work, but to go for 19 runs per over after giving away almost nothing in the last 2 games, it's not talking about Russell. It's actually talking about the brilliance of de Villiers.
Yeah, and cricket is a harsh game. And that's the other decision that I was, feeling was a little bit just unoriginal from Owen Morgan. He just saved Russell, didn't give him an over earlier. When Maxwell was batting well, said, I'm going to bowl him 18 and 20. When he got hit for runs in the 18th, he got the 20th. It felt very unoriginal from Owen Morgan. So hopefully this was just a bad day. KKR came out to chase. They had 204 to get again at Chennai. Obviously, let's disclaimer, this is the best pitch I think I've seen so far at Chennai. But still, very, very tall ask, right? Not easy to do. At one point, I think they needed 82 from 27, which a few years ago, I would have shut the TV. But when Dre Russ is batting, you still have that little bit of belief. Obviously, couldn't do it today. A couple of highlights from the KKR innings. All of the openers, all the top order got off to a little bit of a start. This was the first time Morgan looked like he was getting off to a start. But again, 20s, 18, 21, 25, 21. Nobody went. When you're chasing 200, one player needs to stand up tall, right? You need one player at least to make a 50, let the others bat around. And it just didn't happen today. So, Varun, do you see any changes? I mean, Rana, Gill, and Tripathi is a new top 3 for KKR, right? Tripathi's opened in the past. Rana's played lower down. Do you see them changing and chopping that a little bit, or you think they're pretty happy with where they are?
I personally, I would consider batting Shakib at 3. I think the more time you give him, the better it is. Unfortunately, Tripathi is going to have to get pushed down the order, and that's not fair to him. But something's got to change, right? So I have a feeling Shakib needs to play a little bit more of an anchor role up top. He's a fantastic batsman, and then allow Morgan, Karthik, and Russell to play the way they want. Shakib he's the 120 kind of a player, right? So get him up there slightly earlier. At the end, if you need him to start going at 200, I believe it's very hard for him.
Interesting. I'm almost of the opinion that I don't know if Shakib, unless his bowling can continue to pick up, I don't know how he fully fits into this side. So there's a chance we see them chopping and changing a little with that. But I like the three Indian guys, the batters, Gill, Rana, Tripathi. I agree with you. I think they may float around with the orders a little. Right. That brings us to a wrap for the 4 matches for this week. It's been a pretty exciting week. A couple of kind of the same storyline where team chasing just fell short, like in Hyderabad. A couple of pretty exciting RCB putting up 200 plus on the board. Overall, pretty good week for cricket. IPL's alive and kicking, doing great. Varun, I do want to ask you, you talked about captaining Kohli. I think that may have been setting up for what I'm going to do now, which is a quick fantasy league update. How is your team doing before I get into the details of it?
Not good. Not good. Not a good start to the IPL fantasy for me. But it's early days, man. You also know that you can't count your chickens before they hatch.
It is a very long season. We've all learned that the hard way. But if you're not playing with us yet, join the Edges and Sledges fan league on the official IPLT20.com fantasy platform. You can find the league code on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all our social handles. We'll post it again in the show notes of this episode. We have 219 teams playing, which is pretty good. So I think my goal is to just end in like the top third or so. I don't think I can be top 5 or top 10, top third, which is the top 60 something teams, but it's top 72 teams. That's what I'm going for. As it stands, our top 3 teams, pretty consistent from last week actually, but they've used a lot of their subs and all their boosters, so reminder of that. But in first place is Liju Soman with 5,900 points. Second place is Whistle Podu Mari with 4,700. So the top team has a 1,200 point lead over the second. I think that'll go away. And in the third place, as always, just to make my life hard, is a tough team named Shasha 1528EF. I don't know where people come up with these team names, but a couple of good fighters in the top 5. Lots of great competition going on. So keep that going. Keep the banter on social media going. My team is ranked in number 66. DJ is ranked 69. So I think it helps that I had Mayank today and he's doing pretty well. And then I'm just trying to go through. Hold on. I got to keep scrolling. Varun, do you know where you are in the Edges and Sledges League by any chance?
I have no idea. I had a terrible game.
128. So you're pretty far down there. At least you're close to the top half. So one more good game today and you can get into the top half of this league. But some of the guys I'm sure aren't even playing anymore because there's a couple of people who don't look like they've made changes. But that is our fantasy league. Again, join us and play with us there. Again, a reminder, we're running a great contest called the Bat with Siat contest. So for the month of April, if you answer this question with the hashtag Bat with Siat on Twitter, you have the opportunity to win an actual cricket bat from our partners at Siat. And we gave out one for March. It was outstanding. So the question for this month is, which uncapped player has taken the most wickets in the IPL? Again, which uncapped player has taken the most wickets in the IPL? Answer that question. Hashtag Bat with Siat. We'll run the draw at the end of April. And that pretty much brings us to a wrap. Varun, before we go, next 1 week of IPL, what are you expecting in terms of surprises? Is Mumbai going to fall off their winning streak? Is RCB going to continue winning? Are we going to see 5 or 6 wins in a row from RCB? What's going to happen in the next week?
Yeah, I think we're going to be surprised by RCB. I think they're going to have a couple of more wins, sitting pretty at the top of the table. I think everyone else is going to be struggling a little bit in the middle. I would predict that Punjab will make a little bit of a comeback. But otherwise, yeah, it's open, man. Looking forward to it.
Reminder, we have another midweek episode that'll come up this Wednesday. Excited to be with you twice a week. Enjoy the IPL season. We will be back midweek. This has been Edges and Sledges, brought to you by Siat Tires.